20 years ago, in the city of Olympia, Washington State, a young teacher named Elena Garza vanished without a trace after arriving at Sacred Heart Church to prepare for Easter, leaving her family and the entire community in horror and despair. Authorities suspected the young priest, who was also present at the church that night, of being involved in the disappearance, but with no body found and too few clues to continue the investigation, the case quickly stalled. However, for the next 18 years, Elena's elderly mother never gave up, persistently sending letters to the police every year, clinging to the slim chance that her daughter was still alive somewhere. Then one day, when the state's cold case unit was established and a young inspector reopened the old file, she discovered a piece of evidence that had been forgotten for nearly 2 decades, a small detail, but enough to turn the entire case upside down. Before diving deep into this haunting story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cases that get solved after years of silence, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Olympia, Washington, late March 2005. The small city nestled between pine forests and rainy hills, damp and cold in the characteristic humid air of the Northwest. Rain fell lightly but persistently throughout the afternoon, leaving glistening streaks on the road leading up to Capitol Hill. At the top of the hill, Sacred Heart Parish Church stood silently, its gray stone bell tower fading in the mist. Inside, the wooden pews still carried the scent of candle wax and lilies, the atmosphere filled with preparations for Easter. Elena Garza, 27 years old, an elementary school teacher at a public school near downtown Olympia, was a regular volunteer at the parish during major holidays. She lived alone in a small apartment about a 5-minute drive from the church, leading a routine life with little socializing outside of work and church activities. That afternoon, she left home early, wearing a gray wool coat, carrying a canvas bag, a notebook, and the church keys. Those who knew her said Elena was punctual, organized, and always said she would just stay to arrange things a bit and head home early. When she entered the church, a few parishioners were still there, busy cleaning up after prayers. They saw her check the candle rows, rearrange the altar cloths, and place more flowers by the Virgin Mary statue. Someone recalled that she stopped to chat briefly with Father John Fite, the priest who had been transferred to the parish less than 3 months earlier, young, thoughtful in appearance, and quiet. The two stood talking near the stairs, leading down to the basement, where decorations and items for the next day's service were stored. Afterward, Elena took her bag and papers down the wooden stairs, the basement door closed, and from then on, no one saw her again. The sky darkened, wind blew strongly through the trees on the hill, rain poured heavily. Around after 9 o'clock, the church turned off all lights. A neighbor living nearby reported seeing a faint light from the basement window but paid no attention, thinking it was someone from the parish working late. That night passed normally, with no one hearing any noise or reporting anything unusual. The next morning, Monday, the start of the week, Elena's class saw no sign of her. The principal called her home, no answer. A colleague tried her cell phone. It rang long, then cut off. The family thought she might be stuck with work or her car broke down, but by mid-morning, her mother started worrying. She drove to the church, asked Father Fite and a few in charge. All said they hadn't seen Elena since the previous evening. She continued to her daughter's apartment on Rogers Street. The door was unlocked, the kitchen light still on, the teapot still warm with water, Elena's coat hanging on the chair, the shoes she often wore right by the door. No signs of hurried departure, no note or message left. Everything was eerily quiet. After searching around the building once with no results, Mrs. Garza got back in her car, hands shaking, and drove straight to the Olympia Police Department to report her daughter missing. At the front desk, the young officer recorded the information, asking repeatedly about the last time Elena was seen. When she mentioned the apartment still had warm tea that hadn't cooled, he looked up, his expression changing. The missing person report was filed that same afternoon, temporary case number #05421. A team of officers was sent to Elena's apartment to verify the scene. They conducted a preliminary check. No signs of struggle, belongings intact, everything suggesting she had just stepped out for a moment and would return. At the same time, the police chief assigned a search team around Sacred Heart Parish Church, the last place Elena was seen. That afternoon, the rain persisted, mist drifting over the sloping roads, slowing down the deployment. 3 groups were mobilized. The first checked the church grounds, the second swept the parking lot and the small road behind the hill, the third traced the route back to the victim's home. Flashlights swept over wet grass, illuminating patches of soaked soil. Parish volunteers joined to help, calling Elena's name in the humid air thick with the smell of rotting wood and fallen leaves. No response, only the church bell echoing far in the rain. Police noted a few shoe prints mixed in the mud, but all men's sizes, matching those of parishioners preparing the service. The parking lot was empty, no sign of the silver sedan Elena usually drove. The search expanded to the southern residential area, small alleys connecting from the church down to downtown Olympia, but no witnesses saw her the previous night. A few surveillance cameras were checked, but poor image quality didn't help determine direction of movement. By late afternoon, the search team returned to the church to interview Father John Fite. In his initial statement, he affirmed that Elena had left after finishing arranging the altar, possibly around 8 p.m. He said he didn't remember exactly, as he was checking the storage room and preparing to lock up. When asked if anyone saw her leave, Fite replied that he thought someone was still in the worship area, but wasn't sure. The statement was recorded, no unusual signs. The investigation team noted the scene around the church, slippery ground, tire tracks nearly erased by rain, a section of the steel fence on the side of the hill with subsided soil, but not enough to conclude. They took a few mud samples and photos, filed temporarily. That night, the search force continued sweeping within a 1-mile radius of the parish. Flashlights and police car lights flickered in the rain, shining on dark patches of trees, but no trace of Elena or personal items. No blood, no fabric scraps, no bag. Everything seemed pulled from the air, leaving no sign. The first report sent back to the station at dawn the next day concluded, no physical evidence discovered. No evidence victim left the area by personal vehicle. The case was officially classified as missing person, active search. In the following days, bad weather halted the search. Inside the investigation room, maps of the hill area and church diagrams began to be marked, each red dot representing a last possible place Elena might have stood before vanishing without a trace. On the morning of the 3rd day after the missing person report, Olympia police obtained an official search warrant for Sacred Heart Parish Church. The sky was still overcast, light drizzle falling on the stone steps leading to the main door. The entire hill area around the church was temporarily cordoned off within a 200-meter radius. 3 patrol cars parked along the small road, recording equipment, floodlights, and sealing bags brought inside. The goal of the search was to inspect the entire building structure and the adjacent rectory where Father Fite was staying. Inside, dim light, cold air, with a long-standing damp smell. The church structure proved more complex than expected. The basement nearly 3 meters below ground, consisting of 4 small rooms connected by narrow hallways, including a liturgical storage room, a laundry room, and an old technical passage leading to an abandoned dormitory wing for years. Old brick walls seeped water, plaster peeling in patches. Many areas locked with newly replaced iron locks, keys held by the parish office. Forensic technicians noted unusual material changes, the cement floor in the storage room lighter in color than the main hallway, indicating it was recently poured. They used moisture meters and detected surface temperature in that area higher than surroundings, signs of new material or chemical treatment. The laundry room in the basement had a strong cleaning smell, rising from the floor and sink. Several industrial chemical containers placed against the wall, labeled for metal cleaning. The scene report noted strong chlorine smell, unusually persistent for normal use. In the corner was a mop with a broken handle, the head still wet. No blood traces or foreign objects on the floor. The forensic team photographed the entire area, numbering sample positions from the floor, walls, and drains. In the holy storage room, wooden shelves thickly stacked, dusty, no signs of disturbance. The ground floor was checked next. Police paid attention to the hallway behind the church, leading to the backyard, with an old wooden door but new lock. This door connected to iron stairs down to the basement, matching the last place Elena was seen. The lock shiny, no rust, signs of recent replacement. When asked about the reason for changing the lock, the parish manager said, to prevent rats or strangers from entering the basement area. However, no record of this work in the maintenance log. Outside, the church backyard connected to an old technical road. This road ran straight to the former monks' dormitory, now closed, walls covered in moss. The survey team checked the entrance, discovering fresh soil piled near the air vent, but no suspicious objects. On the ground were traces of small wheelbarrow tracks, but blurred by rain. In the rectory where Father Fight lived, police inspected his personal room with his permission. The room neat, only a wardrobe, single bed, desk, and bookshelf. Nothing belonging to the victim found. However, they noted a similar cleaning smell as the basement, and a handkerchief with faint stains sent for testing. Fight was present throughout the search, voice calm, answering briefly, saying the basement had flooded, so needed cleaning with chemicals. Police noted cooperative attitude, no signs of anxiety. By late afternoon, the forensic team completed inspecting the entire church. Samples numbered from 1 to 18, sealed, and sent to the Olympia lab. Temporary report concluded, no clear traces of the victim or signs of crime discovered, but evidence of recent repairs and cleaning in the basement area. The basement door was sealed, prohibiting entry until lab results. Sacred Heart Church, usually bustling with people every weekend, now unusually quiet. Rain still fell on the old tile roof, water dripping down the steps in murky streaks, as if the building itself was holding back something it didn't want to reveal yet. After completing the search of the church premises, the Olympia police shifted their focus to collecting statements from those present at Sacred Heart on the evening Elena Garza disappeared. A list of 12 people was compiled from the service registration log, including Father John Fight, 2 choir members, 3 altar arrangers, and several parishioners who stayed late to pray. The interviews were conducted in the small meeting room of the rectory, interspersed with some sessions at the police station. All reported that the evening had proceeded normally, with no conflicts or unusual behavior from Elena. An elderly parishioner, Miriam Costa, stated that while locking the main door around 8:30 p.m., she heard a noise echoing from the basement area, like a heavy object falling or a door slamming against the wall. She hesitantly added that she did not check because she assumed someone was still cleaning down there. This statement was recorded, marking a potential time when Elena was still in the building. Another witness, Teresa Hall, a choir member, recounted that while passing through the east hallway, she saw flashlight or mobile light beaming from the small basement window. The light moved back and forth for a few seconds before turning off completely. Teresa thought it might be Father Fight checking liturgical items, as only he and Elena remained. The police noted the alignment and timing between the two statements. Other parishioners stated that Elena was cheerful that day, showing no signs of worry or conflict with anyone. One clearly remembered her wearing a light gray coat, hair neatly tied back, holding a notebook, and greeting them with a smile before descending the wooden stairs to the basement area. That was the last image everyone remembered of her. Subsequent interviews focused on Father John Fight. In the initial session, he recounted that Elena arrived at the church early in the evening, worked alone after the other parishioners left, and he departed before her. When asked if he saw her afterward, Fight replied, "Not sure then," added maybe she left a few minutes after me. Notes indicated this statement was relatively vague, lacking details on time or direction. 2 days later, when invited to the police station to supplement information, Fight slightly altered his account. He said he returned to the basement to retrieve a forgotten liturgical vestment and might have seen Elena tiddling candles at that time. When police asked if he spoke to her, he vaguely replied, "Just a quick greeting." The minor change in statement prompted the investigator to note need to verify departure time further. The third interrogation was conducted at the rectory, with the diocese's legal representative present. Fite firmly asserted that Elena left safely, citing someone else who saw her in the yard. But when police asked for the name, he could not recall. Throughout all 3 sessions, Fite maintained a calm demeanor, even tone and minimal expression. He avoided direct eye contact when mentioning the basement, and often gave short answers to questions related to that area. Besides Fite, police also interviewed 2 maintenance workers present the next morning. They confirmed seeing the basement door locked, lights off, but noted an unusually strong chlorine smell in the laundry area, like it had just been thoroughly cleaned. One added that the mop bucket was still full of water, placed right in the middle of the walkway. These details were added to the record, but nothing specific could be concluded. After nearly a week, all statements were compiled. They all agreed on one point: no one saw Elena leave the church. No witness confirmed her appearance outside after the liturgy preparation ended. The only person with direct contact in the final moments was identified as Father John Fite. In the summary, lead investigator Tom Nance noted briefly, estimated disappearance time between 8:15 p.m. and 9 p.m., last person to see the victim, Father John Fite. After completing the collection of statements, the investigation team shifted to analyzing Elena Garza's movements on the day she disappeared. The goal was to determine the exact time she left home, arrived at the church, and any possible movements afterward. Police started from Elena's apartment on Rogers Street. From neighbor accounts, they knew she left home early in the evening, when it was still dimly light with light rain. The distance from the apartment to Sacred Heart Church was about 2 miles, taking around 8 minutes by car. Along this route were 3 civilian security cameras and 2 traffic monitoring points. Retrieved data showed Elena's silver sedan appearing in frame at the gas station at the start of Martin Street, estimated time around 6:40 p.m. She stopped for a few minutes, possibly to buy something, then continued toward Capitol Hill. That was the last camera recording of her vehicle. Other traffic cameras on the uphill route did not capture any images matching the victim's license plate, due to limited visibility and rain blurring the lenses. Police checked the entire road from her home to the church, finding no signs of accident, skid marks, or dropped items. They confirmed Elena reached the church, based on statements from at least 5 witnesses, but no evidence showed she left by car afterward. When scanning the rear church parking lot, the team found tire tracks blurred by rain, impossible to match tire patterns. Police also checked the entire surrounding area, including 2 roads leading off the hill, but no witnesses saw the silver sedan driving down that night. The initial hypothesis victim left the church voluntarily gradually lost basis. The Olympia Police Telecommunications Unit coordinated with the carrier to trace Elena's cell phone. Data showed her last call was made late afternoon that day, to a school colleague, lasting less than a minute. After 7 p.m., the phone emitted no signal, no outgoing messages, no social media activity. The technical report confirmed the device was turned off or lost power right in the Capitol Hill area. Around the same time, Elena's financial records were checked. Credit and debit cards showed no transactions after 5:30 p.m. Once she bought coffee near home. After leaving the apartment, no further financial activity occurred. The lack of card or phone use made the kidnapping hypothesis outside the church area unlikely, as there was no movement data leaving the Olympia cell coverage. In the report to the investigation head, Inspector Tom Nance noted, electronic signs indicate the victim lost signal within Capitol Hill, likely detained or out of contact right in the church premises. To bolster this hypothesis, police scanned all civilian cameras in the neighborhood around the parish. Some homes had cameras facing the main road, but views were obstructed by trees. Among the few images obtained, one clip at 9:05 p.m. showed vehicle headlights turning on and driving out from the church area, but the angle did not show the license plate. The technical team enlarged the image, only seeing a blurry silver tail in the rain. Police could not confirm it was Elena's car or someone else's. In terms of timing, the video aligned with the time witnesses heard noise in the basement. If it was the victim's car, it left the church premises about an hour later than Father Fite's statement. Police also considered the possibility of someone else driving, but no witnesses saw anyone at the wheel. The inability to determine direction made the vehicle central to the analysis phase. In the internal report, Nance summarized, data shows, Elena Garza arrived at the church on the evening of March 26, was in the basement at the last sighting, and from then showed no signs of leaving the premises. No phone activity, no financial transactions, no images confirming movement. Most reasonable hypothesis currently, victim disappeared within Sacred Heart Church or adjacent area. As the meeting ended, rain still fell outside the window, drops hitting the tin roof steadily. On the wall map, 3 red dots were circled: Elena's home, Martin gas station, and Sacred Heart Church. Between them, a short connecting road, just a few miles, the final path Elena Garza took, and never returned. 3 days after completing the movement report, the Olympia Police Department submitted a request for an expanded search warrant for the basement of Sacred Heart Church. The legal basis relied on matching witness statements about strange noise and light from the basement, plus suspicious points from the prior survey. The warrant was approved by Thurston County Court early Monday morning. Light rain persisted as the forensic team returned to the church. The basement area was fully sealed, allowing only police and parish representatives inside. Halogen lights gleamed on old brick walls. The team rechecked each room, starting with the laundry, where strong chemical smell was previously noted, then moving to the storage room at the hallway's end. The narrow room had peeling concrete walls, floor covered in fine gray dust. When sweeping the dust, investigators noticed the cement in the right corner wall was lighter in color than the rest, with uneven edges, indicating recent pouring. The technician used a moisture meter and metal probe. Results showed this floor layer was significantly thicker than others. A small crack at the cement edge was clumsily filled with mixed mortar. They noted it, photographed the scene, then drilled 3 samples at different depths. While moving items in the storage, an officer found a strange object under a wooden table leg, a vintage Nikon free camera, dusty with dried mud on the bottom rim. The body had gray stains and thin mold from dampness. The lens was still attached, cap missing. No strap, shutter button scratched, but the entire device intact. Opening the film compartment revealed an undeveloped black and white film roll. Police photographed the discovery location, labeled Evidence E1, then carefully placed it in a moisture-proof seal bag. No other personal items or documents in the room besides old wooden crates and electrical tools. On the table surface, they found faint circles like marks from heavy objects placed and then moved. Flashlight sweep of the room showed no blood traces or strange fibers. The surrounding area was fully photographed per scene protocol. In the adjacent hallway, the team collected additional cement dust and rotted wood samples for comparison. The basement air was heavy with chlorine, damp condensation. Each footstep echoed dryly. The new parish manager representative stood silently at the door, face tense as police moved items out. All floor samples, including 3 cement parts, 1 mortar piece, and a brick fragment from the corner, were placed in sealed plastic boxes, labeled S04 to S07. Preliminary scene report noted, storage room floor shows signs of recent tampering. Evidence seized includes a Nikon F3 film camera and new poured cement material samples. When checking the drainage system, they found the outdoor connected pipe sealed with new material, impossible to open by hand. Police lacked proper tools to remove it, so only noted and photographed. The search lasted over 4 hours. At conclusion, all evidence was sealed, signed by 2 technicians and 1 church representative. All evidence bags were loaded onto a specialized vehicle, transferred directly to the Olympia Criminal Forensics Lab that day. The basement was taped with red seal, marked, "Do not enter. Investigation ongoing." Outside, rain paused, pale light filtering through dusty windows onto the newly drilled floor. No body, no violence traces, but physical tampering signs were clear. Lead investigator Tom Nance wrote the final line in the record. No biological signs or human objects found, however, repair activity and evidence existence in suspect area indicate need for further technical analysis. He closed the notebook, looked through the narrow window where weak light entered, feeling the thick silence like the surrounding concrete walls. The search ended, leaving only lingering chlorine smell and steady water drips from the ceiling to the new floor, faintly echoing in the deep darkness of the old building. The samples collected from the church basement were transferred to the Olympia Police Department's forensics lab and sent for analysis within 2 weeks. Results returned nothing conclusive. The cement composition was common construction type, no abnormalities. Dust, wood, and cleaning water samples all tested negative for blood or human DNA. The film roll in the Nikon free camera was developed, but frames were blurry, mostly walls, altars, and unrecognizable dark corners. No details directly linked to Elena Garza. The report concluded, no signs of violence or evidence directly related to the missing person. All investigation leads seemed stalled at the basement. Police shifted to checking Father John Fite's personnel records, the last person seen with Elena. Data showed he served in the Spokane Diocese before transferring to Olympia in 2002. An internal Spokane police note mentioned inappropriate conduct incident with a female parishioner, but the matter was handled internally, no criminal charges. Fite was then reassigned to another diocese before Sacred Heart. When the team requested detailed 2002 incident files, the diocese office replied that clergy disciplinary records are internal, protected by religious regulations, and unavailable without court order. Police filed for legal assistance, but the process dragged on without results. Meanwhile, they interrogated Fite a 4th time. He arrived on time, neatly dressed, calm demeanor. When asked about Spokane rumors, Fite briefly said it was just a pastoral misunderstanding and refused further comment. He reaffirmed that on the night Elena disappeared, he only worked in the church, not leaving the premises until everything was done. Police compared his statement with church activity logs and confirmed his presence at morning prayer the next day. No abnormalities. Still, in the file, the investigator's note appeared, lack of evidence but cannot rule out involvement. Other witnesses were re-questioned, but no one had new information. One thought they saw Elena's silver car parked behind the church early next morning, but could not recall plate or exact time. Checking parking areas around, Elena's sedan remained unfound. Rescue units scoured the entire forest and drainage ditches at the hill's base, results 0. All leads vanished with her. By mid-May, local press began covering the disappearance, questioning why no progress. The Olympia police chief's representative briefly answered at a press conference, "We have found no evidence of criminal activity. All leads are being examined." However, internally, the atmosphere was heavy. Investigators had worked continuously over 6 weeks, but could prove nothing specific. The only legal basis was an adult woman's disappearance. No witnesses to assault, no DNA traces, no physical evidence of unwilling detention. When the temporary investigation deadline ended, the file was sent to the district prosecutor for review. On July 18, 2005, the prosecutor's office sent official notice, insufficient basis for criminal charges. File temporarily classified missing person, no foul play confirmed. Sacred Heart Church was unsealed, allowed to resume normal operations. Internally, police retained part of the file for monitoring. Father John Fite reportedly requested temporary leave right after the church reopened. In August that year, per diocese announcement, he was transferred to St. Benedict Monastery in Oregon for contemplation and closed environment pastoral service. No community reaction. The case faded as autumn arrived. In police meeting rooms, the Capitol Hill map was removed from the board, replaced by newer case files. Investigators dispersed, desks cleared, leaving only a few unsigned document stacks. A few days later, the Elena Garza missing person file was closed, sealed, and transferred to the central storage warehouse of the Olympia Police Department at the end of summer 2005. The Nikon F3 camera, cement samples, scene photographs, and all basement search records were sealed in evidence, box number 05421A, placed on the fourth steel shelf in the south storage area. Per regulations, files classified missing person, no foul play confirmed, could only be reopened with new evidence or legal request. For many years afterward, no one touched that evidence box. The investigators who worked the case were reassigned to other units, then retired. Elena's name gradually disappeared from internal bulletin boards. The case was occasionally mentioned as one of the unresolved files from the early 2000s, then faded away. Every year around Easter, her mother still called the police department, asking if there was any new information. The duty officer always responded with a familiar script, "No updates, ma'am," the same answer repeated until those calls became less frequent. In Olympia, time passed slowly. Old houses on Capitol Hill changed owners, while Sacred Heart Church remained open regularly. No one mentioned that March evening anymore. In the parish liturgy log, Elena's name was kept on the list as volunteer on leave for personal reasons. Outside the Hill area, more than 200 miles away, Father John Fite had left Washington State. He was reassigned to St. Benedict Monastery in a small suburb of Oregon, a quiet property surrounded by fir forests and narrow trails. The monastery was traditionally for elderly clergy or those wishing temporary withdrawal from pastoral duties. Fite stayed there for years, serving as librarian, living reclusively, avoiding media or community contact. Oregon Diocese internal records noted he was compliant with discipline, no violations. In a 2012 internal circulation folder, his name appeared once, next to assisting administrative work and managing the monastery garden. Local residents knew almost nothing about his past. Fite's room was simple, with only a bookshelf, reading desk, and small window facing the forest. He spoke little, avoided private conversations. On early mornings, he was often seen walking the trails, rosary in hand, slow gait, almost blending into the scenery. For nearly 2 decades, the name John Fite did not appear in any Washington investigation documents. Elena Garza's disappearance lay dormant on the storage shelf, marked temporarily closed, unassigned. The records, samples, and scene photos sat in the cold warehouse darkness among thousands of other files, gathering thin dust over the years. During periodic inventories, that evidence box was logged again, stamped "No status change." No one opened it, no one asked further. In year-end summary meetings, Elena's name was no longer mentioned. In Olympia, most who investigated in 2005 had retired or transferred. To them, it was just an unsolved disappearance. Like many others, time forced them to forget. On paper, everything was complete. File properly compiled. Conclusion clear, no errors. But between those cold lines, an unnamed void remained, where the question about that rainy night persisted, though no one had the patience to ask again. Early 2023, Washington State Patrol announced a reform program for long-standing investigation networks, including establishing a unit dedicated to cold case processing, unsolved cases. The project received federal funding to apply biometric identification and trace DNA analysis to files forgotten before 2010. The central office was in Tacoma, under the State Criminal Investigation Bureau. Among selected personnel, Inspector Sarah Miller, 34, was transferred from Seattle Forensic Technical Unit. She had over 10 years' experience with missing persons cases and scene examination. Sarah's first task was reviewing old files from Olympia police and neighboring counties. Each file box was brought out, sorted by year, status, and crime type. Most were expired prosecution cases, but still had evidence exploitable with new technology. In the compiled list, she noted a 2005 disappearance, code #05421, Elena Garza, classified missing person, no foul play confirmed. Adjacent note indicated the case never underwent DNA testing due to lack of technical conditions at the time. Sarah requested evidence file retrieval. 3 days later, the storage box was transferred from Olympia warehouse to her office. Inside, everything remained per old standards. Red seal faded, black label evidence. Do not open without authorization. Under thin dust was the evidence inventory, including 1 Nikon F3 camera, 3 cement samples, and 4 basement scene photos from Sacred Heart Parish. Attached records detailed seizure locations and search times. Sarah reread every page. Inspector Tom Nance's 2005 report described the church basement with newly poured cement and strong chlorine smell. Final conclusion then, no violence traces or evidence directly related to victim. But Sarah paused at the note at page end. Film roll in camera undeveloped. She immediately sent a request to Washington State Forensic Lab in Tacoma for re-examination. Prioritizing the camera, the device was opened in a sealed room, fully photographed during disassembly, ensuring valid chain of custody. Inside, the black and white film roll was intact, dry and brittle from age. Technician noted potential image recovery via digital scanning while sampling DNA from the surface. Sarah observed nearby, sensing the team's caution. This was the first time in 18 years Elena Garza's evidence was reopened. In the attached record, she noted priority DNA testing on main contact surfaces, shutter button, focus ring, battery cap. Additionally, she proposed organic molecule scanning with trace technology, newly implemented at the lab since 2022. The camera was resealed in an anti-static box and internally shipped to Tacoma with all photo files. Cement samples and scene photos were sent parallel for chemical testing, searching for hidden blood traces. Same day, Sarah accessed internal database for Sacred Heart Church updates. The building still existed but ceased operations in 2019 due to deterioration. This prompted her to add a note, original scene intact, high resurvey potential. At day's end, with only fluorescent lights reflecting on paperwork, Sarah completed a temporary report. She summarized, Elena Garza disappearance is unresolved file with well-preserved evidence, never DNA tested. Propose full reanalysis with current trace technology. Report signed and sent to command by late afternoon. Folding the file, she paused at an old scene photo. A church basement corner, light-colored concrete floor, pale yellow light from small window. Everything in the image eerily still, as if touching it would shatter the silence along with the answer buried for 18 years. 2 weeks after evidence transferred to Washington State Forensic Lab in Tacoma, initial examination results were returned to the cold case unit. The report, nearly 40 pages, stamped confidential, clearly titled, Elena Garza, case #05421. The first line in results made Sarah Miller reread twice. Trace DNA from Nikon F3, shutter button matched Marta Garza's profile. Victim's mother, stored in National Missing Relatives database. Match probability, 99.98%. Lead examiner explained the DNA was contact type, only possible if the object was held or used by the victim. This discovery confirmed the camera was in Elena's hands before disappearance. Other body locations, including focus ring and battery bottom, yielded mixed results from 2 biological sources. 1 unidentified male DNA sequence, no database match. Sarah noted privately, need to trace second identity, possible suspect. But the next result silenced the room. Analyzing fingerprints on focus ring and battery cap edge, technicians obtained prints matching 2003 medical records of Father John Feet, stored in Spokane Diocese healthcare system. 2 prints clear enough for absolute probability match. Cross-check with civilian and local police databases, found no other matches. Sarah stopped writing, reread thrice, then requested independent verification to rule out error. Results confirmed fingerprints Feet's. The camera, evidence found in church basement where he worked and Elena last seen, bearing both her DNA and his fingerprints, was the first direct link between them on one object. The report's remainder focused on the film. The old, brittle, stained black and white roll was scanned with infrared recovery. Of 24 frames, only 8 yielded clear results. 6 were church interior, altar, stained glass windows, basement stairwell. The last 2 differed markedly. 7th frame showed narrow hallway, dim light, low angle, seemingly hasty shot. Center frame, dark-haired woman in light coat, holding notebook, turning head, half face visible. Enlarged, facial recognition software identified 87% similarity to Elena Garza's file photo. The final frame blurrier, yellowish, same scene but woman gone. Only long black clerical robe shadow at hallway edge, upper body in darkness. No face, just vague adult silhouette. This was presented in image report with note. Photos, taken in Sacred Heart Church basement, likely by victim or second person. Black shadow in final frame unidentified. Sarah read each page in her office. Tacoma rain outside. Each word like tapping on paper. She marked 3 key points: victim DNA, suspect fingerprints, images with robed figure, individually dismissible as coincidence. Combined, they formed a chain strong enough to reopen a nearly 2-decade closed case. Final forensic report, signed by lab, concluded, E1 evidence analysis shows biological and physical link between victim Elena Garza and individual John Feet. No evidence of third-party involvement. Sarah drafted concise summary to Thurston State Prosecutor. In 3-page attachment, she emphasized new findings, reset investigation timeline, proving Elena in basement at final sighting, directly linking evidence to the only person remaining in church that day. End of day she stood, opened window to wet yard. Streetlights reflected yellow on concrete. On desk, 2005 file open, title missing person. No foul play confirmed crossed with red pen. Bottom, Sarah signed and stamped new, reopened. Active investigation. 1 week after forensic report sent to Thurston Prosecutor, Cold Case Unit received approval for original scene resurvey. Sacred Heart Church on Capitol Hill, abandoned since 2019 due to structural decay and severe leaks. Area around building overgrown with weeds, danger. Unsafe structure sign hanging crooked on iron fence. Early that morning, Inspector Sarah Miller and forensic team arrived in light rain. They brought ground-penetrating radar, core concrete drill, and modern sampling tools. Main wooden door rotted, hinges rusted. Inside air thick with mold, floor thick dust. Weak light through cracked stained glass reflected water-like streaks on walls. Sarah stood in main hall, surveying silent space, every sound echoing, recalling 2005 report descriptions. She opened old church structure map on tablet, directing team to survey areas, basement, especially east storage, where cement newly poured. They descended creaking wooden stairs, basement dark and cold, brick walls moss-covered water streaks down floor. Old metal pipe across ceiling, in storage corner, where Nikon 3 found, light cement still intact, surface hard, no cracks. Sarah signaled technician to place ground-penetrating radar and scan. Screen showed faint horizontal reflection waves. After slow multiple scans, anomalous response at about 50 centimeters depth, hollow ellipse, size of file box. Technicians rechecked with magnetic sensor, results clear material density change. Sarah ordered probe drill at response edge. Core drill activated, bit piercing thick cement, metal on hard sound faint. Withdrawing bit, cement powder fell, mixed with rust smell. They widened hole centimeters, inserted endoscope camera. Screen light reflected flat metal surface, square edges. Sarah breathed deep, confirming buried foreign object. After command consultation, team decided small area excavation for access. Work over an hour. When final cement slab removed, they saw old gray-silver metal box, about 40 centimeters long, lid rusted. Sides faint, 1970s patterns. Box lifted gently, placed on nylon-lined stainless tray, photographed in place. Opening lid, damp rust smell rose. Inside 3 items, broken wooden rosary, thick, black cloth, like clerical fabric, and small folded yellowed paper, with handwritten JF, at corner. Scrawled letters, just initials, and period. Sarah used tweezers to remove each, place on separate trays, label E21, E22, E23. Rosary, 12 intact beads, string broken middle, cloth about 8 centimeters, edges singed. Paper nearly illegible, only initials clear. All photographed, packed in moisture-proof bags. Technician sampled box interior surface for biology. Under portable light, dark brown stains on walls. Quick test weak positive for hemoglobin, human blood sign. Sample sealed S12, sent to Tacoma lab. Collection complete, room rephotographed fully. Sarah viewed drilled floor, edge revealing older rough darker cement below. She noted in record, hollow in new poured layer contains metal box, personal items, material with blood traces. High evidentiary significance. Survey end, team checked technical ducts to dormitory. Found gas pipe section sealed with new concrete, unmarked. Marked yellow paint for later. Exiting basement, Sarah looked at small window, dim light, dust floating in cold air. Everything silent enough to hear radar pulse stop. Every basement detail seemed unchanged from 2005, except now the silence was cut open. Leaving, she final notebook note, metal box, female blood. JF handwriting, need origin verification. Rain thicker outside, steady on old tin roof, mixing wind through cedars, like repeating rhythm of memory, awakened after 18 years buried under cold cement. 3 weeks after the basement survey, while samples and examination records were being analyzed in Tacoma, an unexpected tip shifted the Elena Garza case. On the morning of April 14, 2023, the cold case office received an anonymous mailed package with no sender, only the words, "For investigation use only." Inside were 3 photocopies of old documents, ink faded but the Olympia Diocese red seal still clear. 2 were internal letters between Bishop Richard Monroe and the Olympia police chief in 2005, who oversaw the initial investigation. The content silenced everyone in the meeting room. In the letter dated May 12, 2005, Bishop Monroe wrote, "The situation in the community is highly sensitive. Any expansion of the investigation into church premises could severely damage parishioner faith. I recommend authorities exercise caution and refrain from further inspections within Sacred Heart Parish until directed by us." At the end, he signed and stamped the diocese seal. The second letter, handwritten, from the police chief's office, confirmed acknowledging the diocese position and suspending all unnecessary search activities until legal request. Both documents were stamped confidential with internal archive codes, never disclosed. Sarah Miller carefully placed them in separate evidence bags, then sent for authenticity verification. 3 days later, the diocese archive responded that the letter samples fully matched Bishop Monroe's seal and signature. He died in 2011. This confirmed the documents were genuine. However, that was not the most striking part. The third sheet in the envelope was thinner, older, scrawled handwriting, black ink turned brown. No header, just "Your Excellency. I have committed an unforgivable sin. I fear if I stay everything will be exposed. I only ask to leave, to find a place for repentance." Below the last line was the abbreviated signature, John F., and date July 2005, exactly when the case was classified, missing person. No foul play confirmed. The letter was on standard Sacred Heart Parish office paper, with small print parish stationery at the bottom corner. Handwriting analysis showed multiple similarities to Father John Fite's signatures in church records and old bank documents. The preliminary expert report concluded high similarity probability, unlikely forgery. When verification returned, the meeting room atmosphere changed. The cold case team reconvened, 3 documents laid side by side on the table. They revealed 2 information layers. 1. Diocese interference in the 2005 investigation. 2. Existence of a confession, albeit indirect, from the suspected individual. In the report to Thurston's state prosecutor, Sarah wrote, "Evidence suggests religious authorities influenced the 2005 investigation process, while a handwritten document by Father John Fite expresses self-admission of criminal act, timed with case closure." State Prosecutor Michael Garza, veteran of historical cases, requested an emergency meeting with involved units. The meeting occurred at Washington State Patrol headquarters in Tacoma. All documents were projected, with forensic lab results, victim DNA on camera, Fite's fingerprints, robed shadow in film images, and now the confessional letter. These evidences formed a unified timeline, sufficient to prove the 2005 disappearance was no longer random. Internal reports stated, basis to determine obstruction of investigation and potential criminal offense related to Elena Garza's death. On April 27, 2023, the state prosecutor signed the decision to reopen case #05421, changing status from missing person, closed, to active criminal investigation. A short internal memo was issued, not public to media, citing discovery of new evidence related to primary suspect. As Sarah signed the notification, she noticed her name under lead investigator. 18 years after Elena Garza vanished, the forgotten file was officially revived. Outside, early summer rain fell on Tacoma, heavy drops on office windows. In the gray afternoon light, 3 old sheets on the table became the starting point for a new investigation, evidence hidden in silence for nearly 2 decades. First week of May 2023, per state prosecutor directive, Inspector Sarah Miller traveled to Oregon to approach potential witnesses who lived with Father John Fite after 2005. Diocese records and church migration data noted his reassignment to St. Benedict Monastery on the plateau near Mount Angel. Over 200 miles south of Olympia, the monastery was quiet, isolated, surrounded by fir forests and narrow gravel roads uphill. Fite lived there over 15 years as a retired priest, minimal external contact. The monastery resident list included Dale Tashner, now 88, former spiritual advisor to priests, sent for long-term retreat. Sarah contacted the abbot in advance, presented Washington State Prosecutor work permit, and arranged a private meeting in the monastery reading room. That morning was cloudy, fog covering the hills. In the cold stone room, Tashner sat ready, thin, gaunt face but alert eyes. On the table, only a teapot and Sarah's recorder, which she placed, stating clearly, "This interview is recorded for criminal investigation purposes. Do you consent?" He nodded, hoarse but clear voice. "I've been waiting for someone to ask about this for a long time." She started the device, noted start time. When asked about John Fite, Tashner paused, then slowly recounted that in 2006, Fite arrived at St. Benedict in mental distress, required long-term retreat. He was assigned to converse, guide, and observe. He had insomnia, often walked the garden at night, Tashner said. Once in conversation, he blurted that unforgivable things happened before coming here. Sarah asked him to repeat verbatim what he heard. Tashner pondered, hands clasped, then replied. Fite said, "I kept a woman in the church basement. She prayed, then stopped breathing." The statement stunned him, but when pressed, Fite shook his head, saying it was metaphor for sin and faith silence. After that, Fite avoided the topic. Tashner only saw him pray alone in the chapel late at night, sometimes crying softly. Years later, as health declined, Fite requested lighter duties, avoiding visitors. Tashner said he kept personal notes on conversations, including detailed description of the evening Fite, mentioned keeping a woman in the church basement. Sarah requested to see the notebook. After hesitation, Tashner stood, went to the old bookshelf, pulled a brown leather-bound book, edges worn, yellowed pages, small neat handwriting. Midway, entry dated June 2006 and line. Fight said, he locked a woman in the basement, couldn't save her. God will judge him. The line made Sarah pause, eyes scanning the elderly shaky but clear ink. She photographed the page, requested permission to take copy for handwriting analysis. Tashner agreed, signed the record permitting notebook content use in investigation. In the meeting's final part, Sarah asked if he ever reported this to the monastery or diocese. Tashner nodded weakly. I told the abbot then. He said record it, but not stir old matters. He said sometimes people repent symbolically, not necessarily literally. Afterward, his notes were archived. No further questions. When Sarah asked if Fight mentioned the woman's name or specific location, Tashner replied, no, he only said church basement in Washington, and I assumed it was where he served before here. The nearly 2-hour interview ended. Sarah stopped recording, read confirmation transcript, and had Tashner sign. His hoarse voice, if what I heard was truly a confession, I hope you find the truth. I've kept it too long. She nodded, thanked him, left the monastery in silence. Outside, Oregon fog thick, gravel road downhill covered in fallen leaves. On the car back seat, photocopied notebook and recording in file bag. Sarah opened her work notebook, wrote brief note. Witness Dale Tashner, direct testimony valid, confirms Fight said, kept a woman in church basement. Basis to consider indirect confession. She closed the notebook, started the engine, left St. Benedict Monastery as thick fog gradually swallowed the road ahead, carrying the echo of a secret acknowledged after 18 years. After the Oregon trip, Sarah Miller returned to Washington with the photocopied notebook and St. Benedict recording. Her report was sent to the state prosecutor, evaluated as valuable for witness investigation expansion. While the task force analyzed content, a new detail emerged from 2005 diocese personnel list. Father Thomas O'Brien, then assistant priest at Sacred Heart, worked alongside John Fight during Elena Garza's disappearance. Now 84, retired, living in a clergy nursing home in Yakima, eastern Washington. The name appeared in Inspector Tom Nance's old notes, but was never formally interviewed, as he transferred immediately after case closure. Sarah decided direct contact. Early June afternoon, she arrived at St. Raphael Nursing Home. Father O'Brien received her in a small room full of books and saint photos. He was frail, slow-moving, but lucid, deep, clear voice. When Sarah stated purpose, he was silent long, then softly. I knew someone would come back to ask about that someday. She placed the recorder on the table, clearly read interview confirmation info, asked if he consented to recording. He nodded, trembling hands on table, said, if I don't speak now, perhaps no one will know what I've carried for 20 years. O'Brien recounted that summer 2005, after the disappearance was announced, diocese-wide. He spent much time with Fight, as both handled morning liturgy. I noticed clear change in him, he said. Before, Fight was strict, quiet, but after the incident, he became unnaturally silent, often in the prayer room, startled when hearing the basement door. One evening, O'Brien went to the rectory to discuss liturgy with Fight. He clearly remembered light rain, dark hallway, only desk lamp on. Fight sat behind the desk, hands clasped. When O'Brien asked what worried him, Fight said, I committed sin against God, one he will not forgive. O'Brien was stunned, pressed, but Fight said no more, just bowed head murmuring prayers. Days later, O'Brien said, Fight came to his room with a small cassette recorder. He said he wanted to tell me something, but only for me to hear, no one else, O'Brien recalled. I turned it on, let the tape run, and he spoke much about sin, fear, and a woman who had her breath taken. I didn't fully understand, but his voice shook, and he clearly said, it happened in a basement. I thought he was confessing. Afterward, Fight demanded absolute secrecy, calling it private confession between two priests. O'Brien kept the cassette, locked in a drawer. Over years, he dared not play it again. When Sarah asked if he would surrender the recording to authorities, he nodded slowly. "I'm old, and I believe God wants the truth spoken." He opened the cabinet, took out a small metal box. Inside was a black cassette, faded label, pencil written, July 2005, JF. She received the tape, drafted seizure record, and he signed voluntary provision. Before leaving, O'Brien added, "I still remember his clearest words, 'I didn't mean to kill her, but God saw everything.' I've never forgotten." Next day, the cassette was sent to State Forensic Audio Lab. Audio specialists restored and digitized data. Despite poor quality, male voice clear through background noise. In the roughly 12-minute segment, the man repeated sin, punishment, and church basement. Voice ID software. Voice recognition matched 96% with John Fite's voice from 2004 church interview recordings. One segment even had gasping breath and broken sentence. "She begged me, I couldn't listen anymore." The audio lab report returned to Sarah 2 days later. She read each line, highlighting conclusion, "Male voice in recording matches John Fite's sample at high similarity. Content shows self-confession elements." This audio evidence, combined with Dale Tashner's Oregon testimony, reinforced that Fite's words were not religious symbolism, but specific act admission. Sarah compiled detailed report, logging cassette as evidence E31. With description, Father Thomas O'Brien's personal recording, containing John Fite's indirect self-confession. Before closing the record, she added personal note, both testimonies consistent on woman in basement's detail. Voice identified matching suspect. Authentic data. That evening, leaving the office, Sarah looked north where fine rain fell. The old cassette weighed mere grams, but to her, it was like a past door swinging open. The voice buried 18 years finally heard again. Clear, undeniable. After voice match results from Father O'Brien's cassette, the state prosecutor requested Sarah Miller expand verification of John Fite's financial transactions immediately, post-2005 disappearance. Goal: find unusual payments possibly related to repairs or renovations in Sacred Heart Church basement. Prosecutor's office issued subpoena to First Olympia Credit Union, where Fite had personal account and diocese-guaranteed spending card. 1 week later, financial records transferred. In April and May 2005 statements, Sarah discovered strange transaction sequence right after Elena Garza reported missing. Specifically, April 4, 2005, Fite withdrew $1,200 cash at branch near Capitol Hill. 3 days later, April 7, $1,175 check payment to Westside Construction and Repair. Check note: poor technical room basement floor, Sacred Heart. This description exactly matched the location where forensic team found new cement layer in 2005 search. Sarah requested recipient company records. Though the business ceased, state commerce tax filings remain. In Q2 2005 return, Westside Construction and Repair reported $1,175 revenue from minor repair project at Olympia Parish. Sarah contacted former company representative Rick DeLong, now 72, the builder at the time. In video call, DeLong confirmed pouring concrete in an old church technical room. Asked who ordered, he replied, "A priest named Fite, introduced as rectory manager. He wanted it urgent, said floor cracked and leaking. I came 2 days, broke old floor, poured new cement about half a meter thick." Sarah asked if anything unusual. DeLong paused, seconds, then said, "Just remember strange smell like chlorine or bleach. I joked someone just deep cleaned the bathroom. He just smiled, said nothing." This account was recorded and filed. Prosecutor Michael Garza deemed this critical link, invoice and original check, proved Fite, proactively hired for basement floor, pour less than 2 weeks after disappearance, bypassing diocese financial process. Per rules, all church repair cost required bishop office approval, but 2005 diocese records showed no such project, meaning Fite paid personally, an irregularity for his position. Sarah cross-checked more bank data, finding after construction payment, Fite withdrew another $300 cash, unspecified. Same period, he purchased large industrial cleaning solution at Olympia hardware store. Invoice dated April 9th, 2 days after floor completion. Total, nearly $250, including 2 cans concentrated chlorine and floor cleaning tools. These items matched those investigation team noted in basement during search. Upon completing the compilation, Sarah sat staring at the final line in the report, the faded check notation poor technical room basement floor. A phrase seemingly ordinary for maintenance work carried the full weight of a buried secret. In the dim office light, she closed the file folder, feeling as if the 18-year puzzle was gradually coming into focus. Every small detail, every figure, every signature, all pointing to the same conclusion, that cement layer was not for repair, but for concealment. While the state prosecutor reviewed the financial evidence, the Washington State Forensics Lab also completed the final examination phase. On June 21, 2023, the composite forensic report was transferred to the prosecutor's office. Over 80 pages thick, red-stamped forensic composite report. Case #05421. This was the comprehensive conclusion of all evidence analyses, biological samples, material examinations, and supplemental data obtained since the investigation restart. On the first page, bold text stated, preliminary conclusion, cause of death, asphyxia due to oxygen deprivation in confined space. The report began with the biological examination team's analysis. Trace blood sample from the metal box interior, found under the basement matched Elena Garza's DNA. Probability 99.96%. Forensic experts concluded the blood could form from soft tissue damage during impact or body movement. No third-party DNA detected in the sample, except minimal male DNA matching John Fitt's profile. The report emphasized suspect DNA presence on evidence stored with victim DNA, confirms direct contact possibility during the incident time frame. The next section analyzed cement composition. Using carbon isotope method and hydration ratio measurement, material experts determined the cement was mixed and poured within 48 hours after March 26, 2005, exactly the victim's reported missing time frame. The top layer was 47.5 centimeters thick, matching builder Rick DeLong's testimony description of poor technical room basement floor project. Air bubbles in the sample indicated hasty mixing, not industrial standard, possibly hand-mixed on site. In the residual gas subreport, the team detected abnormally high chlorine levels in both cement and drainage pipe area, corresponding to high concentration industrial cleaner use for surface cleaning before pouring. All these data reinforced the hypothesis that the basement was altered to conceal objects or biological traces. The third report section, closed environment analysis, was particularly noteworthy. At the east basement wall, experts found trace methane gas stains and organic vapors, indicating short-term biological decomposition in sealed space before cement sealing. This matched 2005 file-old humidity data. Equipment then recorded unusually high floor temperature. Comparing all results, forensics determined Elena Garza was likely detained in Sacred Heart Church basement in restricted airflow space, leading to unconsciousness and death by asphyxia. No signs of weapon assault or direct strangulation, but biological evidence of sweat and soft tissue in dry dust samples proved she struggled in the confined environment. Forensic report identified cause of death as asphyxia by entrapment. Asphyxia due to confinement in sealed space, estimated death time 12 to 18 hours after last contact. The accompanying criminal investigation conclusion, signed by prosecutor Michael Garza, stated, John Fite's actions demonstrate intentional unlawful confinement of the victim in the basement area, resulting in fatal consequences. Physical and biological evidence rule out accident. Charged offense. Unlawful confinement resulting in death, confinement leading to death. Below the appendix presented evidence correlation chain, 1 Elena and Fite's DNA on same object. 2 victims' blood in metal box buried under cement, 3 floor pour project invoice payment within 48 hours, post-disappearance. 4 witness testimonies and fights admission recordings, all converged on one consistent conclusion: no internal contradictions. In the internal meeting immediately after report receipt, Sarah Miller summarized findings, voice slow but firm. No doubt Elena Garza did not leave the church that night. She died in the very place she served. The room fell silent. An older investigator, former colleague of Inspector Tom Nance, nodded quietly. Nearly 2 decades earlier, they stood in that basement amid chlorine smell and light-colored cement, but then lacked tools or technology to see deeper. Now, with time's dust peeled away, everything emerged heartbreakingly clear. That afternoon, Sarah left the office holding a copy of the composite forensic report. On the file cover, bold text stood out: Case of death, asphyxied by confinement. Classification: homicide, indirect. She paused in the hallway, hearing rain patter on glass, then walked slowly toward the prosecutor's office. Every figure, every sample, every blood drop recorded over 18 years now connected into a complete picture. Elena Garza was confined, sealed in the basement, and the hastily poured cement was the final curtain over the sin John Fite thought no one would ever lift. On July 12, 2023, after nearly 3 months of expanded investigation, Washington State Prosecutor officially signed the arrest warrant for Father John Fite on charges of confinement leading to death in the Elena Garza case. The warrant was immediately transferred to Oregon State Police for coordinated execution, with 246-page evidence file attached, including forensic conclusion, construction invoice copies, DNA analysis, and indirect confession recordings. Upon signing, Prosecutor Michael Garza said briefly, "Time to end the 18-year silence." News was kept absolutely confidential. No press release, no leaks. At 5 a.m. the next day, 3 Oregon State Police vehicles left Salem, heading to St. Benedict Monastery. Summer Mountain Road thick with fog, headlights gleaming through fir trees. The task force was instructed to act silently, no force unless necessary. Upon arrival, the monastery still shrouded in mist. Early bell just rung. The abbot was informed of search and arrest warrants, signed cooperation confirmation. John Fite, then 86, was in the reading room. Police knocked, identified themselves, read the warrant. He did not resist, stood still, hands trembling slightly. When asked to confirm identity, he nodded, soft voice, "I knew this day would come." 2 officers cuffed him per regulations, then escorted him out. Monastery brothers silent, only footsteps on stone hallway. No one spoke. Fite was placed in a specialized vehicle, transported to Oregon State Police Station in Salem for extradition procedures. During medical check, he was calm. No lawyer request. Aged face, deep eyes, voice still clear. When officer asked if he knew the arrest reason, Fite replied, "They say I did something in the past. The past never leaves us, does it?" The answer was recorded verbatim in the report. On July 13th, after procedures complete, Fite was handed to Washington State Patrol and transported to Olympia in escorted vehicle. The 4-hour trip under light rain. Sarah Miller was present in the transport, seated opposite. She said nothing throughout, only looking out the window at trees blurring in mist. Fite silent most of the time, occasionally looking up, gaze distant. As the vehicle crossed state line, he softly said, "I prayed for her every day. But some prayers cannot erase sin." Sarah did not respond. Upon Olympia arrival, the convoy stopped at Washington State Patrol headquarters at 11 a.m. Fite was taken through side entrance, avoiding reporter lenses. He underwent another health check, given blood pressure medication, then moved to second-floor interrogation room. Arrest warrant announced internally and sent to state prosecutor. John Fite's name officially reappeared in Washington investigation system after 18 years, this time not as witness, but central suspect. In the detention report, under arrest reason, bold text, based on evidence examination results, witness testimonies, and financial documents showing intentional confinement leading to victim Elena Garza's death, occurring in Olympia, Washington, on March 26, 2005. As led through the hallway, Fitt glimpsed the cold case division sign. He paused, weary smile. They still remember? The escorting officer did not reply. Only lightly placed hand on his shoulder. In the prepared interrogation room, white light shone on cold steel table. Fitt sat in the chair, removed glasses, placed on table. Sarah stood opposite, holding file, voice even and firm. Father Fitt, you are under arrest per Washington State Prosecutor warrant. We will conduct interrogation per legal regulations. In the small interrogation room, white light cast on cold steel table, wall clock ticking steadily. John Fitt sat silently, hands clasped before chest, gaze on blank wall. Sarah Miller entered, carrying thick file and small recorder. On table, water cup still warm, thin steam rising into cold air. She introduced procedures per regulations, clearly read start time. July 13, 2023, 14:10. Interrogatee, John Fitt. He nodded slightly, hoarse voice asking, I have the right to remain silent, correct? She replied. Absolutely. But anything you say may be used as evidence. Fitt closed eyes, silent long. Sarah opened file, placed on table, a photo of Nikon Fitt 3 camera, developed film roll, and blurry black and white basement hallway image. She spoke slowly. Do you remember this? It was found where Elena Garza disappeared. Her DNA on the shutter button, your fingerprints on the focus ring. Fitt still did not look up, only pen tapping lightly on table. Sarah continued. We have the letter you sent Bishop Monroe in July 2005. Your handwriting. I have committed an unforgivable sin. Do you want to explain? Room atmosphere heavy. Fitt sighed, eyes still closed, voice soft, like prayer. Sin takes many forms, Miss Miller. Sometimes one only wants to save a soul. She leaned forward, voice calm. Save by confining someone in the church basement. At this he looked up, gaze briefly bright, as if surprised by direct question. I did not confine, he said softly. I only wanted private talk. She beat too quickly. Sarah silent seconds, then started recorder. Explain clearly, what does private talks mean? Fitt exhaled, voice faltering. I wanted to help her understand. I saw her obsessed with sin. I asked her to stay after liturgy prep, for private talk in basement. We sat discussing faith, confession. He paused, eyes staring at table. Then what? Sarah asked. She wanted to leave, he replied slowly. She said it was late, mother waiting. I held her hand, said not finished. She pulled away, stumbled, fell against wall. I thought she was just dazed. Sarah turned a page, showed photo of metal box found under cement. We found this in the basement. Inside broken rosary, clerical cloth, and blood DNA matching Elena. Recognize it? Fate. Looked at photo long, then nodded slightly. Mine, he said. The rosary, I carried it many years. I left it when burying her. Sarah noted quickly, voice lowered. You said burying, what does that mean? Fate. Leaned back, eyes cloudy. She stopped breathing, he whispered. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I prayed, then thought. If hidden, God would forgive. Room silent enough to hear clock hands move. Sarah opened church structure map, spread on table. Specify clearly where you placed her. Fate. Looked at map, trembling hand, pointing east corner. Here, auxiliary tunnel to outer wall. I placed her in old ventilation shaft, not 2 meters deep. I took cement from storage, mixed, poured over. Next morning, hired workers to redo entire floor, so no suspicion. Sarah, firm voice. Meaning you intentionally concealed the body? He replied without hesitation. I didn't think I'd escape. But when Bishop called, said say nothing, I understood. That was the only way. She asked. Who called? He shook head. Hoarse. Bishop Monroe. He said. Silence is part of repentance. She folded map, looked straight. Do you understand your actions caused a death and concealment for 18 years? Fate, closed eyes, exhaled. 18 years, every night I hear her praying. I knew they'd dig it up someday. Voice, weakening but steady. If you want to find, go east wall, under floor, a steel plate. Below is ventilation tunnel. I left her there. Sarah immediately recorded every word, then pressed recorder. Stop. End time read clearly, 1752. After Fate signed confession confirmation, the transcript was sent immediately to state prosecutor, with urgent request. Supplemental excavation warrant at East Basement Auxiliary Area of Sacred Heart Church. Within an hour, Thurston County judge approved. On the warrant bold print, based on suspect John Fate's confession, investigation authorized to excavate East Auxiliary Basement to collect evidence and locate victim Elena Garza's remains. As Sarah exited interrogation room, Olympia sky dark, light rain on tin roof. She stood in hallway, looking through glass window at Fate, sitting still in room. Head bowed, hands before him, like praying. In her hand, recording still warm, trembling voice echoing in mind. I kept her to talk privately. But now, that conversation became final evidence charging him. On ground floor, forensic team prepared equipment. Excavation tool transport departed that night, heading to Capitol Hill, where church basement cement was about to be broken again. This time not just for truth, but to end the silence covering Olympia for 18 years. Night of July 13, 2023, mere hours after excavation warrant approval, forensic technical convoy left Washington State Patrol Headquarters, heading to Capitol Hill. Light rain, headlight streaks on wet road. Sacred Heart Church emerged in darkness. Dark, tile roof, and broken stained glass windows, reflecting flashing vehicle lights. Basement area sealed with barriers and red tape. Halogen floodlights illuminating East Yard. Sarah Miller present at scene, with forensic-led Patrick Lee directly supervising. In her hand, Fed's confession copy, red-marked, East Wall, under steel plate, auxiliary tunnel, body location. At 22:45, technical team began opening designated area, nearly half-meter thick cement floor cut in square. Concrete saw noise echoed in narrow space, white dust rising thick. When first cement layer lifted, damp smell wafted up. Below was old rusted steel plate, bolted with 4 bolts. Took nearly 30 minutes to remove all. When plate lifted, narrow shaft appeared, about 1.5 meters deep, wide enough for one person lying. Flashlight swept down, reflecting dull plastic. In that darkness, large gray-silver plastic bag lay pressed against wall, wrapped with rotted rope. Sarah approached, signaled forensic team to photograph scene, then carefully lowered herself. Decay and long damp earth smell escaped, thick in air. When bag opened, everyone fell silent. Inside was a woman's body in semi-decomposed state, clothing torn, neck and arm bones intact. On left wrist, still a small silver bracelet engraved EG, matching 2005 file description of Elena Garza's usual bracelet. Sarah stood still, eyes on faded letters, hand gripping notebook tightly. No one spoke, only rain outside window pouring on ground. The body was carefully lifted from the shaft and placed on a specialized stretcher wrapped in clear plastic. The entire process was continuously filmed and photographed for forensic records. Technicians collected soil samples, fabric fibers, and rope sections. The bag also contained thick black cloth, matching clerical robe material, and long hair strands coiled around the victim's wrist. The forensic team sealed all evidence, coded E51 to E59. The body was immediately transported that night to the Central Examination Facility in Tacoma. Sarah followed the vehicle, saying nothing during the return trip. She knew the 18 years of silence had ended that very night. 2 days later, DNA examination results were announced. Mitochondrial sequence from cervical bone sample fully matched Marta Garza's DNA, the victim's mother. The report concluded, body excavated from Sacred Heart Church basement, Olympia, is Elena Garza. born 1978, missing March 2005. Bracelet identification, height, and dental records matched perfectly. Results transferred to state prosecutor on morning of July 16. Same day, forensic team completed autopsy. In the record, lead examiner Dr. Henry Clive noted clearly, body intact, no fractures or blunt force trauma, no sexual assault signs, cause of death, asphyxia, oxygen deprivation in confined space. Estimated death time within 12 hours of disappearance. These results reinforced John Fite's entire confession. He had accurately described the body location and condition, details only the perpetrator could know. Prosecutor Michael Garza immediately signed charge amendment notice, upgrading from unlawful confinement, resulting in death, to murder in the second degree. In the legal document, reason line stated, confinement and concealment of victim, leading to death by asphyxia in sealed space. Demonstrates indirect intent and evidence destruction effort. That afternoon, Sarah was invited to present excavation report to prosecutor counsel. When she projected the silver bracelet photo engraved EG on screen, the meeting room fell completely silent. That image, a small object surviving amid cement and time, was final evidence confirming Elena Garza had been found. 18 years earlier, she entered the church in rain, carrying notebook and faith. 18 years later, also in rain, her truth was brought to light. That night, after work ended, Sarah returned to the scene one last time. The basement now empty, only excavation pit filled with sand, cement, and damp earth, smell mixing in air. She stood long by the east wall, once the burial site, listening to rain dripping from iron door gap. On the new cement floor, she placed a single white lily, bowed slightly. Then she turned off the light, stepped outside. Atop Capitol Hill, Sacred Heart Church sank into darkness again, but that silence was no longer concealment. It was closure of a sin cycle, just exposed by justice's light. John Fite's trial opened on the morning of November 3, 2023, at Thurston County Courthouse, Washington State, nearly 20 years after Elena Garza vanished. Courtroom 2 was packed, mostly reporters, former Sacred Heart parishioners, and those following the case since 2005. In the front row, Elena's mother, Marta Garza, sat quietly, clutching a worn white handkerchief. At the defense table, Fite was assisted in, white hair, gaunt face, light gray shirt. He sat, hands trembling but gaze calm. Prosecutor Michael Garza led the prosecution team, with Inspector Sarah Miller attending as primary investigation witness. Jury of 12, carefully selected after nearly 2 weeks of voir dire. Garza opened with slow, deliberate voice. This is a case about a woman robbed of breath in the place she believed safest, a church. He projected initial images, Elena's 2004 teacher file photo, then Nikon F3 camera, and recovered black and white film. Garza said, "This is evidence E1, found in church basement, containing Elena Garza's DNA and defendant's fingerprints." Next, he presented examination evidence chain, victim's blood in metal box marked JF, matching DNA results. Material report confirming cement poured within 48 hours post-disappearance. Personal account payment invoice for basement floor workers, testimonies of 2 witnesses, Monk Dale Tashner and Father Thomas O'Brien, about defendant's indirect confessions. Garza concluded presentation with Fite's July 13 interrogation recording. The elderly hoarse voice echoed in courtroom. "I kept her for private talk. She fell. I thought she was just dazed. Then I hit her in the tunnel. I was scared." When audio stopped, the room silent. Prosecutor looked to jury. That was not accident. It was choice. Choice to confine a person, choice to conceal sin, and choice to remain silent for 18 years. Defense counsel Robert Klein, 65, began calmly. He acknowledged physical evidence undeniable for Fite's presence with victim, but argued it was not premeditated murder. "My client made grave error, but no evidence shows intent to take Miss Garza's life. Death occurred from panic, mistake, not malice," Klein said. He projected current Fite images, an elderly frail man needing daily medication, then turned to jury. Should a man like this at 86 continue bearing sin he has repented for nearly 2 decades? Without considering his remorse, in rebuttal, Garza stood, looking directly at defense table. Law does not measure sin by age or health. It measures by actions. He not only caused a woman's death, but buried her under cement, lived 18 years in silence. That is not accident. That is murder in the second degree and obstruction of justice. He paused, then slowly. No one has right to decide who lives, especially when that person entrusted their soul to him. Trial lasted 7 days. Over 20 witnesses called, including DNA experts, material specialists, and forensic pathologist Henry Clive. Clive confirmed Elena Garza's cause of death, asphyxia from confinement in sealed space, no sexual assault or weapon evidence. Asked if victim could have been saved if found early, he replied, "Open the shaft in first few hours, she might have lived." The statement silenced the room. Marta Garza bowed head, tears on cheeks. 8th day, both sides completed arguments. Jury retired to deliberate at 14:20. Time passed slowly. Courtroom atmosphere heavy. At 19:10 they returned. Foreperson, a middle-aged woman, stood to read verdict. We, the jury, after examining all evidence, find defendant John Fite guilty on 2 counts, murder in the second degree and obstruction of justice. A collective sigh rose. Fite sat motionless. Only slight nod, eyes closed. 3 days later, sentencing. Before reading, Fite allowed final statement. He rose slowly, leaning on table, weak but clear voice. "I prayed for her every day. I do not ask forgiveness, as I am unworthy. But I believe, somewhere, God knows I was wrong." Prosecutor Garza did not respond, only bowed head. Judge Linda Pearson opened sentence, firm voice. Based on evidence and jury verdict, court sentences defendant John Fite to life, imprisonment without parole. Possibility plus obstruction of justice count, defendant bears full investigation and prosecution costs. As sentence read complete, courtroom lights blazed. Marta Garza collapsed head into hands, sobbing, while Sarah Miller looked through glass, seeing rain begin outside. Quiet rain, identical to the night Elena vanished. She thought, finally, after 18 years, justice had concrete form, an 8-page sentence, a light-filled room, and an elderly man, hearing his name with the word guilty. As police led Fite from courtroom, he glanced back once, lips moving as if to speak, then silently bowed head and walked. 3 weeks after sentencing, Washington State Patrol held press conference at Olympia headquarters. On podium, Prosecutor Michael Garza read short but solemn statement, after 18 years, case #05421. Elena Garza is officially closed. Defendant John Fite sentenced to life without parole. All evidence verified and archived per regulations. Justice, though delayed, has been served. Behind him, cold case unit members stood in line, including Inspector Sarah Miller. Her face calm, gaze on audience row where Marta Garza sat. The petite mother held her daughter's photo, old silver frame kept nearly 2 decades. As Garza finished, she only nodded slightly, tears rolling slowly on cheeks. Immediately after press conference, Elena Garza's body was reburied at Sacred Heart Memorial Park, less than a mile from Old Church. Funeral simple, no reporters, only family, few old friends, and investigation team. Olympia sky clear that day, light sun after many rainy days. Coffin draped white cloth, single lily on lid, Elena's favorite flower. As coffin lowered, Sarah stood beside Marta, gently holding her hand. "My daughter finally comes home," she said softly, voice trembling hoarse. Sarah only nodded, unable to speak. Church bells rang long, echoing down valley, sound identical to recordings in old film photos found in Nikon camera years ago. After funeral, case evidence returned to Olympia Police Department storage. The Nikon F3 camera, first clue reopening entire case, cleaned, resealed anew, placed in small metal box, red label, E1. Evidence closed case, #05421. Beside it, cement samples box, black cloth piece, and broken rosary. Per regulations, all evidence permanently archived as historical records for special forensic value. Before sealing, Sarah held the camera one last time. Body still had scratch at focus ring, where Fight's fingerprints and Elena's DNA remained. She felt cold at fingertips, as if entire story crystallized in that cold metal. A lie, a life, and nearly 2 decades of waiting. She placed it back in box, sealed, signed confirmation. Closed, the 21st of November, 2023. Following month, Washington State Patrol released 214-page investigation summary report, compiling entire case progression from 2005 to 2023. First page printed, justice is served after 2 decades. Kong Li Ged, Si, Thi, So, Hai, Thi, Pak. Report sent to State Justice Institute, Federal Department of Justice, and police academies as typical cold case training material. Opening written by Sarah, no case truly closes until the final question is answered. The Elena Garza case proves truth does not vanish, only sleeps until someone patient enough awakens it. Report detailed entire evidence chain from Nikon F3 camera, black and white film, basement metal box, to confessions and forensic data. In appendix, timeline fully reconstructed, March 26, 2005, disappearance, 07-2005, file closed, 2023, cold case reopened, 07-2023, excavation, 11-2023, conviction. Each milestone a long beat in justice's journey. Public reaction in Washington was intense after the verdict was announced. Local newspapers unanimously ran front-page headlines, Olympia's lost voice found. Many former Sacred Heart parishioners came to place flowers outside the building, now just a cracked brick shell. A small wooden sign was erected reading, "In memory of Elena Garza, 1978-2005, may truth set you free." That simple sign became a destination for residents for weeks afterward. Inside Washington State Patrol, the cold case unit was expanded, receiving additional funding and personnel. 1 year after the case, Sarah Miller was promoted to team leader, but in her personal file, she still kept the only black and white copy of the photo of Elena in the basement hallway. Blurry frame, dappled light, with a black clerical robe shadow behind. The photo was placed in a small frame on her desk, not to remind of sin, but to remember that every small detail can open a large door to truth. In December 2023, a small memorial service was held at Sacred Heart Park. Light snow fell on the grass, thinly covering the stone marker with Elena's name. Mrs. Marta brought a bouquet of white lilies, placed it down, whispered, "Mom promised to bring you home." Now Mom kept her word. Sarah stood a few steps away, quietly bowing her head. As the service ended, she looked up at the gray sky, thinking of the years the file lay dormant in cold storage, only waiting for someone to open it. That same day, Washington State Patrol's data system updated case #05421 status, closed, homicide solved. A simple status line, but for those who lived with it for 18 years, it was a declaration heavier than any sentence. End of year, Sarah returned to headquarters, walking the long hallway to evidence storage. Yellow lights reflected on neatly stacked metal boxes, each holding an unfinished story. She stopped before the red-labeled box, E1. Outside, the new seal gleamed. She gently placed her hand on the lid, feeling cold spread through her fingertips. Everything was over. No more hypotheses, no more waiting. But in that moment, she felt as if someone stood behind, a very faint warmth. She turned, only light reflecting from the glass door. Leaving the room, she turned off the lights. The final glow slid across the box label, reflecting the small print, case #05421, justice served. Outside, rain began to fall, drops hitting the metal roof like time closing. And in that rain, Olympia seemed to exhale a long, relieved breath, as if the entire city was finally freed from the silence of the past 18 years. The Elena Garza case story is not only a journey to reclaim justice after 18 years, but also a profound reminder of truth's power and society's responsibility to protect people from power and silence. In today's America, where the justice system is built on transparency and openness, this case reflects a sobering reality. Sometimes, the very places seen as sacred or trustworthy become hiding spots for mistakes. In the story, John Feet, a respected priest, exploited community trust to conceal a crime. The silence from diocese levels and the 2005 investigation's reluctance to expand due to religious pressure were the reasons justice was delayed nearly 2 decades. Without Sarah Miller, a young inspector daring to face old files, and the victim's mother's persistence, the truth might still lie under that cold cement layer. The lesson for modern American society is no organization, religion, or individual stands above truth and justice. In an era where forensic technology and data can recover secrets thought buried forever, everyone must understand that transparency and honesty are the only foundation for societal progress. Elena Garza's story also highlights women's role in justice and investigation. People like Sarah Miller represent a new generation daring to ask questions, daring to touch truth. In a country always fighting for equality and fairness, the final lesson is justice may come late, but as long as someone believes in it, justice will never vanish. If you believe justice can be buried but never lost, subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more cases closed after years of silence. Thank you for following Elena Garza's story. See you in the next video, where truth will once again be brought to light.